I want to be a healthcare worker who can talk about healthcare. Kylie the Krankenschwester. I know it doesn't roll off your tongue like a porn star name, but I love it. There are 3 things you need to acknowledge. 1, your own mortality. 2, the fragility of health, yours and everyone else's. And 3, the equality of life. Is healthcare a people's issue in the United States? And what do I mean by that? 1, is healthcare reform about the people, individuals? And 2, can an individual spark a grassroots movement to induce change, small or large, small even, in the healthcare industry in America? Is healthcare a people's issue politically in the United States? I don't think so. I think it has spiraled way out of control. I think that the only players at the table in discussing healthcare reform are private insurance companies, Medicare and government reimbursements, and pharmaceutical companies. I don't think the individual person or consumer has a seat at the table at all. Seems to be that healthcare and healthcare reform is a conversation that happens above our heads. Between politicians, right, lobbying groups, pharmaceutical companies, private health insurance companies, and Medicare. Seems like they all battle each other, but they're actually all best friends. Anyway, they want to keep the conversation above our heads. They want us to think that we can't possibly have a voice because we just don't understand the system. That demanding quality of life or affordable medications or access to procedures, that's too simple. You can't just base a healthcare system off of that. We already have this huge thing rolling, this healthcare system in America, and it's too big to stop. We got to keep rolling with what we've got. And I think they keep the individual and the people out of the conversation by intimidating us with words and concepts and principles that are within the realms of healthcare economics and healthcare ethics. So I plan to make videos focusing on these 2 realms. They absolutely intersect, and one must have a sturdy understanding of their ethics as they approach a healthcare economic system or suggestion or reform. Also, though, we need to understand our healthcare history, what we've already tried, the conversations that have already happened, because we're kind of making the same mistakes over and over. And I think it's because the people feel intimidated by the words used, the principles being, supposedly being applied appropriately, and not feeling like they can even have the voice to advocate for themselves because these conversations are again happening above their head. So in the next few videos, we're going to look at words like utilization, managed care, moral hazard, exotic life-saving treatments, end-of-life decision making, competition, markets, opportunity costs, consequentialism, utilitarianism. And I'm so excited. I love this stuff. And that's why I just have this desire to make these videos and just share it. Because this is what circles all through my head. As a bedside nurse in the hospital, I see the played out examples of all of this and the huge system that just keeps bowling over people's fundamental rights. So I'm going to try to summarize the healthcare reforms of the 80s and the 2010s in a way that shows how important it is to understand healthcare history, healthcare economics, and healthcare ethics, or at least have a basic understanding of principles and vocabulary used in these realms so that we can be participants in the conversation about healthcare reform, healthcare change, us as individuals. Okay? So, what was going on in the 80s? Healthcare costs were, of course, spiraling out of control. The thought was that doctors were overprescribing or over ordering certain procedures or imaging or medications. And that's because at that point, the main type of payment plan was a pay or a fee for service. If the doctor ordered an x-ray, you paid for an x-ray. If a doctor ordered a CAT scan, you paid for a CAT scan. And if a doctor ordered an MRI, you paid for an MRI. And there was no management of the doctors. Thus, managed care organizations or managed care became popular. It existed before, but became much more popular in the 80s, and legislation supported that. So, a managed care organization would kind of approve or not approve certain things ordered by a doctor uh, based on a bigger picture. It makes kind of sense. So a doctor gets paid a lot more money, maybe for ordering an MRI than ordering an X-ray. So if you come in with a twisted ankle, what if the doctor was ordering an MRI when really an X-ray would suffice? Okay, so those kinds of things were the assumption that that was happening widespread, that was happening all over, and that doctors needed to be managed because they were gaining too many profits from administering healthcare, and that's why healthcare costs were so big. So in the 80s, the idea behind managed care was to reduce utilization. Reduce utilization to reduce costs. Reduce utilization to reduce costs. Okay, but what does utilization mean? Utilization is a person's number of interactions with the healthcare system. So, in other words, in layman's terms, they were going to cut costs by making healthcare less accessible. And that's what happened. Yeah, healthcare costs got under control, but utilization went way down. That means people weren't getting healthcare treatments. So, understand the historical significance of what was going on, the healthcare economic, principles and standpoint or vocabulary that was being thrown around. And 3, is it ethical? Because it sounds like from an ethical standpoint, you'd want a society would want to increase utilization. We need more people interacting with the healthcare system so they get the healthcare that they need. But from a cost perspective, no bueno. That does not work. We need less people interacting with the healthcare system so it costs less. That was managed care organizations of the 80s. And managed care organizations still absolutely exist today. Okay, but let's look at a separate issue, something different. In the 2010s, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. What was the push for the Affordable Care Act? To make healthcare affordable, right? Because once again, healthcare costs had spiraled out of control. So what was the economic principle used to support the Affordable Care Act? Competition drives down costs. If we increase private healthcare companies, the number of healthcare companies, it'll drive down healthcare costs, obviously, because it's an economic principle that competition drives down costs. Insurance companies will be competing with each other for customers, so they will offer their services at lower costs to individuals, right? That's basic economics. That's how pieces of the Affordable Care Act got support, widespread support, because people believe in this principle of competition drives down costs. The healthcare industry, it's not a perfectly competitive market. It does not play by the rules of basic economics. And not much does. Okay, Adam Smith, there's the door. And that's a side tangent of we need to stop sucking Adam Smith's dick. We need to stop drinking the Kool-Aid of capitalism. and realize a lot of these principles aren't applicable in real life and they're screwing us over. Okay, I digress. Affordable Care Act, trying to make healthcare affordable. They were preaching that competition will drive down costs. Therefore, we need more private insurance companies. We need to expand the private healthcare industry so that costs will go down because competition drives down costs. Here we are, 10 years later. Has it worked? Did competition drive down costs? I love all of these topics, and I love that my job gives me a front row seat to all of these things playing out. So to bring it back around, the individual slash the people need to demand a seat at the table to talk about healthcare economics, healthcare ethics, healthcare history, and what we demand for ourselves. Do we need more healthcare reform on this huge system that already exists? Or do we need to gut it and just revolutionize it? I'm Kylie the Krankenschwester. I'll see you next time.